welcome. Today I have a really important question to ask you. What is the story that you're telling yourself? This theme of stories the stories we tell ourselves is so very important. It's going to be one that we'll be revisiting over and over and over again. So today, we're going to just get started with that. And the first thing is, every story we tell ourselves has two parts, okay? Well, the first part is the facts, just the facts. These are external. We have no control over them whatsoever. The second part, though, is the stories that we tell ourselves about what those facts mean. That is internal, and we can absolutely learn how to command that part. You know, we're in the midst of a huge opportunity to learn this right now, and to see these two parts very, very distinctly, and to examine how they're playing out in our own lives and have been playing out in our lives, in our thoughts and in our inner dialogues, in our beliefs, our habits, even in our conversations with other people. And we're being called, I believe, we're being called by what's happening in the world right now to examine these stories that we tell ourselves about the facts. Okay? Just think back across your life. Every story that you have that you're telling yourself, other people are involved. And if we were to take all of you separately and say, tell us the story of, and give them a topic, chances are each one of you would have a slightly different version of this, and yet all of those stories start with exactly the same set of facts. So what is this all about? Well, okay, the facts are just the facts. They're completely neutral, okay? Like this pandemic virus, and it's horrendous. People all over the world are getting sick, and they're dying, and at rates we couldn't even have imagined a month or two ago. But beyond those basic facts, everything beyond those basic facts, that's part of the stories we're telling ourselves about what these facts mean and what they are. And we're telling ourselves what these facts mean. What do these facts mean about me? What are they saying to me? What do they mean to me? What do they mean about me and to my loved ones? And we don't know for sure. And so it's very tempting to act as if, for each of us, to act as if the story we're telling ourselves is the absolute, unequivocal truth. And yet we've just said, if you ask 3 people, 5 people, to tell the story about this fact, you're going to get 3 or 5 completely different stories, same facts. Even within your own circle, I'm guessing that you know some people who are completely stressed and worried. You know some others who are very calmly preparing. You know even others who are completely embracing this time. They're going to do things they've put off or that they've always wanted to do. And that can be anything from deep cleaning your house to creating your own personal retreat. And yet, all of these people are coming from the same set of facts. I want to keep coming back to that point. So we know that the stories that we tell ourselves about the facts are highly, highly internal and highly, highly individual, because not everybody's telling themselves the same stories. So, you know, calamity's a great teacher. We have no choice but to learn in the midst of calamity. And if we can learn to see this distinction between the facts and the stories we tell ourselves about these facts in the midst of this catastrophe, then we have something really valuable to carry forward and to begin using this same approach with all of our self-stories, all of them, the ones that we've had before and the ones we're going to have as we go on. The language, the story of I can't do this, or I don't know how to do that, or The worst one right now is I always get sick. I always catch everything that comes along. But whatever it is, that language, that self-story, it actually never served us, ever. But now it's being called into a spotlight. We have to see it. We actually can't avoid seeing it. And our choice then is to examine it or to literally collapse under it. And that gives you, me, all of us who are alive right now, the opportunity to decide what language we're going to use and what stories we're going to tell ourselves. And this opportunity to decide the stories that we're going to tell ourselves, you know what? It's always been there. Every day of our lives we've had this same opportunity, but it typically takes something that gets our attention, big time. In this situation, y'all, it's a whopper. If this doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will. So now more than ever, we must learn to abandon our non-nurturing self-talk, our non-nurturing self-storytelling habits, our old mental and emotional ruts, because they are not what's going to carry us. They're not what's going to create a bridge for us to get through in better shape or even intact to the other side of this. But that doesn't mean pretend your self-story doesn't exist. No, they do exist, and they exist for a reason, and it's got its roots somewhere. This habit of how you tell your own self-stories, it's got its roots somewhere in something that's happened to you, and that's something you've learned. Really, you've been taught by something in life that this is how to tell your stories. And I tend to think of our self-stories a lot like toddlers or cats. They're kind of the same. But, when my girls were little, they excelled. Absolutely were masters of ignoring me, doing their thing, entertaining themselves. And most of the time that was fine. I mean, they were little, so sometimes they got into trouble or it got destructive. It didn't really mean they meant to, but they were little. They were learning. But just let me go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden, I'm the center of attention. All of a sudden, there's this little hand coming under the door and a little voice saying, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy," or maybe banging on the door. All of a sudden, they need my attention. Right then. Didn't need it 10 seconds before, won't need it 10 seconds after, but right now, they don't want to be ignored. But they also they just needed a word of acknowledgement. They needed some reassurance that I remembered their existence, that the fact that they couldn't see me didn't mean that I couldn't see them or I had forgotten about them. And the same thing happens with the stories we tell ourselves about the facts in our lives. If we just try to slam the door on them and ignore them, they're going to start banging on that door. They're going to be like pushing us into this same old rut of this is how we tell our stories. Don't go trying to ignore me. This is what we do. Don't ignore me. But if we reassure our storytelling method, I know where you came from. I know what you're trying to do. I know. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Because these stories come out of just a lifetime of piled up experiences that have developed into beliefs. And those beliefs then direct our thoughts, and then those thoughts direct our actions. And all of that together develops into how we tell our stories to ourselves about all future facts. But remember, if we acknowledged our children when they were like sticking their little fingers under the door, if we reassured them that we saw them, we knew them, we we loved them, they gradually became okay with not being a part of that part of our lives. And our stories are exactly the same way. So if we can start with our habitual storytelling mode, we can begin to affect our own transformation. Because human transformation, if we're honest, it's raw. It can be raw and ugly and frustrating and frightening. It can also be hopeful and beautiful and ultimately divine. The reality is we've stayed distracted from our own transformation because of our busyness, because of the language that we use, habitually use, and more than anything because of the stories we tell ourselves about what everything means, what we mean, and who we are, and what we are or are not capable of. And we're so capable of so much more than those stories would have us believe. What if we let this time of cocooning distract us from our busyness? Now, there's a radical idea. So instead of paying attention to these habitual stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and about what circumstances mean, what if we invite this time of enforced staying at home because it's for our own good? What if we really make it for our own good? What if we use this as an opportunity to break out of our ruts, our old habits, here's one, to embrace being slow instead of always being in busyness mode, to pay attention instead of just sliding past everything in a hurry and then wondering why, what happened? Why am I thinking this way? Where did this come from? Okay? What if instead of sliding into those old habits, we let this time truly distract us and see, and so we can change how we see the world and how we see ourselves. I mean, the world collectively and ourselves as individuals, because really, the world is our collective work and our collective story. It's a little bit of your story, it's a little bit of my story, and collectively, that creates what we know of as the world. And so we can use this disaster, this time, to tear down our old faulty assumptions, to give us the courage of brave new ideas and approaches and habits. We can use it to dig ourselves out of our own ruts. On the other side, when we emerge from this cocoon, because I'm loving this word, cocooning, but when we emerge from this cocoon into this new normal, which may not look much at all like our old normal, just like the butterfly doesn't look anything like the caterpillar that went into that cocoon. I mean, think about it. We don't yet know what's going to make the cut. But we do know that what waits for us on the other side of this cataclysm is our own brilliant, resilient, creative, courageous mind that wants to be let out from behind our habitual story. It's just been waiting and hoping that we would free it from our rut, from the prison of our own habits, habitual storytelling modes, whatever that might be. That mind is in that cocoon going, ooh, I hope it breaks down all the barriers. I hope the barriers melt in here in those old storytelling modes. I hope we don't bring them out the other side with us. And gradually, everything new will begin to feel natural. That new normal will begin to feel just like plain old normal. It won't be new normal anymore, it'll just be plain old normal. Because humans are astoundingly resilient. It's amazing how resilient we are. And once we have created a crack in the armor of our habitual storytelling, we'll become more comfortable with changing or undoing whatever we have set in motion with our storytelling. Whatever we have set into motion as far as our self-limiting limitations, as well as whatever we've set in motion as far as our creative opportunities, because they're there waiting for us. And as we become more comfortable in changing or undoing whatever's what's been hiding behind, or actually more accurately, probably what's been stagnating behind those old modes of storytelling. It's like we'll be getting off of autopilot, and we'll be becoming so much more aware. And once we've broken that rut, new ideas will emerge that wouldn't have never have occurred before if you had stayed in that old rut. And if you're willing to continue embracing your emotional and mental and spiritual shifts, if you're willing to accept that this is a lifelong marathon, this business of becoming is a lifelong marathon. In fact, it's infused into the bone structure of becoming. And like with any marathon, if you try to just sprint out at the beginning unprepared, you're going to end up vomiting on your shoes. I mean, there's just no pretty way to say that. And if you run off in the wrong direction, you're either going to come in last or you're never going to come in at all. And that's all part of it, folks. You might be tempted to say that this whole thing that I've just been talking about sort of validates your mantra of, I can't. Don't fall for that temptation. It only validates that becoming who you are is like any other goal in life. It comes with times of difficulty, even pain. I mean, come on, look what happens to the caterpillar inside that cocoon before it emerges as a butterfly. So instead, emotionally prepare for this. And for any crisis, whether it's just a teensy one in a moment or a big worldwide one like this, tell your story. So tell yourself, your story does not end today. And it does not have to end with today's thought patterns or storytelling habits. Be willing to be pleasantly surprised by your own progress. And don't measure yourself based on speed or arriving at some imaginary destination. Just, embrace the cocoon and the becoming and take that becoming with you when we come out on the other side. So right now, focus on establishing your own serenity and productivity and creativity and wellness. And when you feel stressed or anxious or afraid, just pause. I mean, it's very likely that's going to happen. So start creating awareness that when that happens, you pause. And ask yourself what story you're telling yourself about the facts. The facts are scarier than many of us have ever faced before, maybe most of us have ever faced before. But ask yourself, in this moment, am I safe? Am I? As safe as I can be in this moment? Am I doing what is best for me? Or am I succumbing to my old story patterns? None of us knows how long this crisis or any crisis will last. The uncertainty drives us all mad. But we also have the opportunity to treat this situation like training wheels, teaching us the skills and the confidence that we need to ride safely on our own. Every day, we wake up in a new beginning of our own personal journey, our own personal storytelling. And for many of us, our minds have not quite come to the terms with the fact that the world has already changed, that it changes every night while we're sleeping. And so we live in some form of denial. And denial only creates more stress and more unhelpful self-storytelling. It only delays the absolutely essential process of acceptance. And it's that acceptance of the facts, combined with adopting maybe a new mode of self-storytelling, the stories we tell ourselves about those facts, or maybe upgrading the process that we have now, because that's what lets us reimagine ourselves, and reimagining ourselves is part of our own self-transformation. So yes, every story has two parts: the facts and the stories we tell ourselves about those facts, not only during a crisis, but every moment of every day. Our stories can foster hope and resilience, or fear and resistance. And as always, that choice is ours. Thank you. I love you, and thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.